understand that all of this should be part of your existing risk management framework. So whatever program you have for risk management, assessing security controls is a fundamental part of that process, where you're going to do things like look at the management controls, the operational controls, the technical controls that you have in place, and you're going to see how effective are they. And essentially what you're looking at is trying to answer these three questions right here. So for every security control that I have in place, has it been implemented correctly? So does it exist? Is it operating as intended? So we might find that we put in a security control and it doesn't work, doesn't do what we think it's going to do. We're trying to evaluate that here. And at the end of the day, this is the real question that you want to answer. Does it produce the desired results? Is that control really protecting us? It's great that it's there. It's great that it operates as the vendor intended it to, but does it give us what we really want? If it doesn't protect us, what good is it? The Security Control Assessment Program should be able to pick up on that and provide that data to you as the risk management function and say, this control is not effective. The System Security Plan, this is another one of those documents that we talked about. The System Security Plan will tell you the controls that you have in place, or should document the controls that you have in place, and what the expected result of putting that control in place, what that control is going to provide to you. So essentially what you're doing is you're doing an audit function on what controls do I have. They're defined in this plan right here. What is the effect that control is supposed to have? And now what are we actually seeing? So you're actually doing an audit to some defined, quote, standard that's defined in your security plan. The two primary NIST publications that you will refer to in part of this process is Special Publication 853A, and this is a huge document that describes all the controls and how to assess them. So don't confuse this with Special Pub 853, not 53A. 53 is the one that describes the controls themselves. This 53A will tell you how to assess those controls. The other one up there is 800-115, and this is the NIST guidance for how to actually go about doing a assessment or a security assessment and building a security assessment program. So generally, this will be the overarching, or 115 will be the overarching, assessment program. 53A will give you the tactical level. How do I assess these controls? So they will work hand in hand for you there. Back to 53A again. So 303 pages on how to develop a security assessment plan, how to assess those controls. It actually lays out a process in combination with 115 about how to assess and look at controls. And then Appendix F, this is where the vast majority of the pages of this document are. But Appendix F will show you for each control, how should I assess it? Should I examine? Should I interview? Should I test? What should I look for? And it gives you guidance on how to evaluate whether that control is actually effective or not. The overall assessment process here, essentially what you want to follow that's laid out in 53A is prepare for the security assessment or a security control assessment. So start collecting documents, develop some type of security assessment plan so you know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. Then you actually do it, conduct the security assessment, and then of course you document all of that and see what are my trends, what are the things I need to fix as part of the after action or post-assessment. So if we dig into each of those processes or each of those steps in the process, start by preparing for it. So here you need to make sure that you've got policies in place that say we have to have security controls. That's kind of a a no-brainer. If you don't have security controls in place or you don't have a policy which dictates what security controls are in place, how can you effectively assess it? You could take a stab at it, but it would be ad hoc. So make sure you've done that. You've done the risk management framework process already. You've implemented all the controls. This is a key one here, the objective and the scope of the assessment. As with pen testing, scope becomes critical. Do you assess everything, all 60,000 security controls spread across 100,000 hosts? Uh-oh. If you call me in as an external, assessor, I'll panic when I see that and then come up with a very large bill for you to pay. If you scope that down and say we only want to look at critical systems and the most critical security controls in place on those systems, well, that's a week worth of work. That's a few days worth of work. Depends on how big it is. But the idea is that you want to set that ahead of time with either your internal team doing the assessment or your external team doing the assessment. Make sure everybody's on board with that. Otherwise, you'll end up with mismatch expectations and somebody providing data on things that you don't need or things costing more than you really should pay for. Notify officials of the impending assessment. Why do you think this is important? Why would you tell people that you're doing an assessment?
Some people, you need their buy-in if you're going to be doing social engineering in the departments.
Yep, you bet. If you're doing anything that might affect people, you probably want to let them know ahead of time. What if you break something during the assessment and it just happened to be during a very critical business operations time? Oops. If you at least run this by them and say, look, we're going to do security control assessment, there is a small risk of breaking something. Somebody can look at that and go, well, what, we're in a critical window here for the next 2 days. Why don't we just delay till Monday or 2 days after this and do it then? Give them the option of that. Do you have another comment?
Yeah, I've seen by telling them what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, something unrelated to you can go wrong, but now you can say, hey, this is what I told you I was going to do, and I wasn't anywhere near that area. Because as soon as something breaks, they're going to be looking at you.
Yep. I was out on a vulnerability assessment and at one particular organization, and it's a vulnerability assessment. We're not doing pen testing or anything, so we're completely above board on everything that we're doing. And we told, these are the systems we're looking at. This is the scope, so basically how we're going to assess this. We are going to be doing things that may break things, but the risk of that is really, really low because we'll actually go through and make sure that if it says it's vulnerable, we'll check it, exploit it to make sure it's vulnerable, to eliminate the false positives. So about 4 hours into the assessment, there's a power outage. Emergency generator kicks in, no big deal, whatever. Well, generator craps out after it kicks in. And sure enough, hey, what are you guys doing to our generator? What? What generator? I haven't gone anywhere near a generator. It's like on the other side of the building. I have nothing to do with a generator. No, you guys did something. You're here doing scans, and you must have touched the generator because it broke. Well, here's the list of IP addresses that I've been looking at. If you can give me the IP address of your generator, because it's internet connected, right? If you can give me the IP address of your generator, we'll compare it in here and we'll see if I've actually touched it. Of course, we hadn't gone anywhere near it, but we got blamed for it. Just convenient scapegoat. Even though we had done this. And appropriate communication among organizational officials. Go back to the story that I just related. When you're out doing these types of security assessments, you want to be able to have functions in place to stop if something goes haywire. If the business or the organization you're assessing sees that maybe there's an external event that starts happening and they want to focus on that instead of on your assessment, this becomes absolutely critical. Other things that you need to do, back to scope and objective. So making sure that you have time frames set, you have a You've got milestones. This is all basic project management stuff now, not just risk management or security controls. So you want to make sure that you've got the time frame set. The second bullet there about competent assessor, that's almost like a, well, duh, but you'd be surprised. There's security assessment companies are very prolific now because it's such a commoditized business. If you go out and hire an external assessor, make sure you ask a lot of difficult questions about how you're going to do this and understand what you're actually getting. You'll probably want to collect artifacts like policies, procedure manuals, configuration diagrams, network diagrams, all of that sort of stuff you're going to give to the assessment team. They should ask for that as they come in the door. Sometimes they'll ask for it ahead of time. And then some type of mechanism to mitigate or minimize ambiguities or misunderstandings. Again, that's the whole communication piece. Sir?
Have you ever had your clients say, I really want you to do this pen testing for me, but I want one of my people with you, and you show them what you're doing? And I've seen that. They kind of slow you down, and then they ask you a lot of questions, and it kind of messes up your concentration. What's your experience with that?
I have seen that. I haven't actually had them be detrimental to the effect or to the effort that we were doing. It's not. I wouldn't say that it's common that we get that request, but yeah, sometimes they'll come in and they'll say, "Look, we just want to have somebody in the room, kind of watching you guys," either because they want to learn the process, or they're a mole and they want to report back on what we're doing. And all of that's okay. I mean, me as a pen tester, I don't care. As long as they don't interfere with meeting my timelines, I'm happy to have them sitting there watching what I do and how I do it. I'm okay with that. And I haven't had anybody actually derail something because they're like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? I haven't had that happen. But, my strategy for that would be to politely say, I have to get my job done. You're welcome to stay in the room, but at the end of the day, I have to complete this assessment. So you want to understand, as you prepare for this assessment, you want to get an understanding of the organization, what their operations are, what their business objectives are, how they do things, how the information or the systems that you're looking at, how are they structured, what the architecture is, and you really want a clear understanding of the security controls you're going to assess. That goes back to scope. If you don't know how many controls or what controls you're supposed to be looking at, it's really open-ended, and you as an assessor might get into time constraints there with that. The entities responsible for implementing these, so for every control you want a point of contact. That way, when you're reviewing that control, if you have questions on that, you know who implemented it and who can answer questions on it. So during the assessment process, I can go to that person and say, we were talking with Billy Bob over here about this, and he said this. Can you validate that? Is that correct? Is that what you intended as the control owner? Organizational points of contact. Again, that's for system control, or that's for the security controls themselves. That's for deconflicting activity. That's for making sure you know who to give the results to at the end of the assessment. Previous assessment results, if they're willing to release that, if you're willing to give that to the assessment team, that will help them, believe it or not, because they'll be able to look at that and go, well, here are the key things that they found last time. Let's either focus on these to see if you fixed it, or skip these and focus on something else, depending on how long ago that assessment was. Objectives and scope we've already talked about. And the last thing here is, again, the security assessment plan. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? By. Again, this is not a security thing. This is a project management issue.